Om Nityo, Om Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman Tamatmastvam Yenu Pashanti Diraha Tesham Shanti Shashvati Netaresham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That one, the eternal among non-eternal things, the intelligence of the intelligent ones, who though one and indivisible, yet fulfills the desires of the many. The wise perceive this one as their very own self. To them belong eternal peace, and to none else. Oh, peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhanaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om. So, about 130 years ago, no, exactly 130 years ago, about this time, in these last few days, Swami Vivekananda landed in Vancouver, British Columbia. And so there's been some celebrations around that. And what we should remember as so very, among the things so significant about that was being brought this way of life that we can live that is intelligent, that is compassionate, that is universal, that integrates our daily life with the highest realization. And so, all salutations to the great Swami Vivekananda. So if you let me show what we were looking at last time. Where is that? And we're going to pick up from where we were. Last time we were working on verse 4. Wondering at the nature of these worlds and their offshoots, I came to know of the three eternal gateways. Abandoning adharma, or unrighteousness, I resorted to the two kinds of knowledge and attained the four fruits of life. So we had spoken a little bit about these two kinds of knowledge and talked about how they are connected with the two great ideals in Vedic society. And really, these are universal ideals. And you could say that they're just brought out very, very well in Indian society in the traditional sense. And these are the material well-being of all, as well as the highest good of all, which is supreme knowledge. So just, as a shorthand, we talked about how this supreme knowledge of the identity of the Atman and Brahman as one, and is the supreme knowledge, and that the lower knowledge, which has to do with earthly knowledge and how to move about the world in a in a moral and ethical way, but also in a way that moves us ever closer and closer to this highest good of all. So we talked about that. And in the verse where he says, I resorted to the two kinds of knowledge and attained the four fruits of life, we get this key that by resorting to the two kinds of knowledge and engaging in daily life with that as our guide, then we can attain the four fruits of life. So before we finish up that section, which is going to be extensive, I want to look ahead to the fifth verse and just the first half of it, because it says, coming to know of people's attachment to lower knowledge, so just the earthly knowledge, I perceived the two types of ego. And seeking maturity, I plunged into the two great philosophical streams to be free of ownership and agency. Well, with any luck, we will get to the two great philosophical streams, and we will incorporate these two types of ego as we examine the four fruits of life and all the concomitants that go with this. And I like to think of what I'm about to show you. And actually, I sent you home last time with that chart as the where is it? As the great Indian integration, the chart of India's ancient system, which not only inculcated the moral and ethical, but brought people step by step to transcendent understanding, transcendent knowledge. So it's important let's take a look just briefly so we can pull this together, because it's all very integrated. Throughout our 30 years or 25 years or a couple of years in SRV, we've all, I see Akshaya smiling, we've all been hearing these things for many, many times. The four fruits of life, the four stages, the four ashrams of life, which are the stages of life that beings pass through. The yamas and the niyamas, these two kinds of knowledge, lower and higher, two kinds of ego, two kinds of karma, that which means action here, the kind that is with desire and the kind that's without desire. All these things, they get melded together in this beautiful, beautiful system. So let's take a look at that now and go through it carefully. So this is India's ancient system for individual and collective well-being and enlightenment. So remember last time that we spent some time talking about the cycle of harmony and how everything is based upon sacrifice for the world to operate in harmony, for us to be in harmony with each other, to be in harmony with our families, to be in harmony with our civic responsibilities, to be in harmony with the different levels of being. Remember that consciousness is seamless, and our identity, our true identity, is simultaneously present here in the physical realm, attached or either identified with or associating with these individual bodies that we have, and simultaneously existing and present in the ancestor realm, in the realms of the gods and goddesses, in the realms of the saints, the seers, the rishis, in the realms of the Trinity, and so forth. It is one seamless consciousness, and all of spiritual life is about reconnecting. We begin by talking about waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, with the understanding that those are like 3/4, for example, 3/4 of a dollar. But it's not, you don't get the full dollar until you add the last quarter. And then you have wholeness. And that is what we call Turiya, the fourth, or it's identical with Atman, identical with this seamless consciousness. So I went off on a wonderful detour there, but it does lead us back into this. Yes, I was talking about how this wheel of life is about bringing us into connection, and we start out being connected with our families, and then connected with friends, and then connected with neighbors and community, and then connected on inwards, so that we connect ourselves through all those layers of consciousness. I don't want to say our, because then it gets too conditioned. So just know that this ancient system that India brings to us is meant to fuse all of that together, to merge it back together, to make all the so-called divisions just like these veils that we can see through, and then maybe even lift. So let's pull together these ideas of material welfare for all beings and the highest good of all. So what this means is that terrestrial knowledge, earthly knowledge, that which we learn in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, postgraduate, etc., that which we learn in work, in our crafts, etc., is all to be put in service of the material welfare of all, and then ultimately in service of the highest good of all. So it should lead somewhere. Swami Vivekananda said that that action, all of our actions should lead to knowledge, and knowledge should lead to truth. And when knowledge doesn't lead to truth, but leads back to the world, back to just making a living, just satisfying desires, then we end up with a warped society. A society that's not looking at anything larger than the individual. So let's fuse those two together. And along with that, let's fuse together the 5 great sacrifices. So sacrifice here means a sense of giving, a sense of surrender, a sense of offering, a sense of service, and in all of that, a sense of reverence and worship. So the 5 great sacrifices are to God or the gods here being the powers of God, things like gravity, force, things like fire, earth, air, water, things like the senses. These are all the powers of the gods, and we talked about that last time. So that's one of the sacrifices, and these are to be performed daily. Sacrifices to the rishis, that's what we're doing right now. We are right now doing our rishi yagya, because we are studying the teachings of the great ones. And it's not just in Vedic society, Vedic thought, that we do this. If we are Christian, then when we study the Bible, when we study the saints or the prophets of the tradition, we are doing Rishi Yagya. And same with the other traditions, whether it be Buddhism, well, that's kind of like Vedanta, but Judaism, Islam, the traditions of indigenous religions, their Rishi Yagya is the study of the teachings. and keeping it alive. And that's what we're doing right now. We are talking about these great teachings, and with that, raising our minds up to the great ones. Then the third one is Pitriyagya, or sacrifice to the ancestors. This has kind of a cultural connotation, but it does show up in a lot of different cultures. Taking it into the modern realm would take a little bit of thought. But I would say that the greatest worship and sacrifice we can do to our ancestors, we can offer to our ancestors, is our own enlightenment. Because as it is said in India, when a person attains self-realization, then that enlightenment is made available 7 generations back and 7 generations forward in their human ancestry. So that's a big deal. Then the fourth one is sacrifice to humans. And so those are sacrifices towards their material well-being. Is it food? Is it education? Is it shelter? Is it comfort? All these things, those are sacrifices to other human beings. Starts in our own families, but definitely does not end there. And then Bhuta Yagya. I didn't have enough space to write all of what that meant, so I just put Bhutas. So that would be what they used to call the subhumans. So that would be like the animals and the insects. It would be having a sense of stewardship and giving and interdependence with all other beings. And that includes plant life. It includes mineral life. It includes all of that. So let's fuse all of those things together into these 4 ideals, the Purusharthas. And the other thing I'd like us to remember is that when we talk about it in terms of the Vedic stream, remember, because we've got that verse coming up that's talking about, I wanted to mature myself. And so I took recourse to the 2 great philosophical streams, the Vedic and the Tantric. And we'll get more into that. But from the Vedic standpoint, the 4 ideals of life are called the Purusharthas. And from the Tantric standpoint, we call them the 4 fruits of life. I think they get the same name in Sanskrit, but we think of them as being granted by Divine Mother herself. So I'm not saying that these things are separate, they're integrated. But from the Tantric perspective, we see them as being gifts of the Divine Mother. And they all come when we begin with Dharma. So one of the beautiful descriptions of Dharma is, it's right here. I was thinking that it was from a different source. So I relied quite a bit on these 4 ideals of life from the introduction to Atma Bodha by Swami Nikhilananda. And I've kind of paraphrased him here. By fulfilling one's dharma, a person marches along the path of progress until they attain the supreme dharma of all beings, namely realization of truth. So Babaji coalesces this idea and just calls it living a divine life. So we want that first. From the Vedic perspective, or the yogic perspective, when I say Vedic, let's say the Vedantic perspective, which represents all 4 yogas in the way that I'm talking about it, which incorporates, as you study each of the 4 yogas and put them into practice, it brings in cosmology, sacred mythology, it brings in worship, it brings in meditation, and it brings in the study of the non-dual truth and all those other teachings that are used for the removal of ignorance. So when we look at the four yogas, which Swami Vivekananda has said is the new religion of the age, it integrates all these different aspects and matures the human being. So when we talk about the Vedic stream and the Tantric stream, that Vedic stream also includes yoga. We are bringing all of that together in these 4 yogas. So then the next, with that in play, this Dharma, which includes moral and ethical life, and includes, sometimes when we talk about moral and ethical life, we forget that it includes generosity, it includes humility, it includes the 10 of yamas and niyamas of yoga, as well as I think there's 20 20 yamas in Tantra, which includes all those things that most of us have heard about, but I'm going to repeat some of them in case some folks are new here. Things like truthfulness, nonviolence, non-stealing or non-coveting, absence of greed, only taking what you need, let's put it that way, moderation of sensual desires, or celibacy, study of scripture or study of the tradition and of the great ones of each person's tradition, contentment, purity, worship of God, self-surrender, all of these things. So Dharma is fulfilled by engaging in all of that and remembering also generosity, humility. So then keeping all of that in tow, along with this ideal of material welfare for all and the highest, in service to the highest good of all, then we take the knowledge that we gain in life through school and experience, and we use that to gain wealth by legitimate means. So artha, wealth must be acquired according to dharma. Otherwise, instead of serving a spiritual purpose, it will aggravate greed and lust, leading to misery. And let's take that together with kama. Kama means satisfaction of legitimate desires here. The word kama by itself just means desire, but put together with dharma, it means the satisfaction of legitimate earthly desires. So fulfillment of legitimate earthly desires must be guided by dharma or it degenerates. And then the final fruit is moksha, liberation. These first 3, even dharma, take place inside of time, space, and causation, inside of name and form, and inside of this relative phenomenal universe in which karmas rise and fall, in which the ego may be ripe, it may be unripe, it may be ripening. All of these things exist in that realm, and so we're causing fluctuations. The person who has had enough cycles of this, I don't just mean in one lifetime, but I mean across countless lifetimes, finally reaches a point where, what is that which is peace? So like the chant that I began the class with, Nicho Nichanam, that one who is the eternal among non-eternal things, who is the intelligence of even the most intelligent ones, who is indivisible, whose form is one and indivisible, which means formless, basically. That is the only source of peace. And so, after so many cycles of this, the being longs for this peace that doesn't change. We may or may not be there, but we need to know about this. So Swami Nikhilananda here says, as the ultimate ascent is steep and the lofty air extremely rarefied, they not only left behind material possessions, but also stripped themselves of ego and desires. He's talking about those whose aspiration had reached this culminating place where, okay, I've had enough of kama, desire, I've had enough of wealth, and I've even had enough of the limitations even of dharma. I want to get beyond all this. Like Sri Krishna says in the Gita, abandon all desire, all dharmas, and take refuge in me. He's talking about this at the highest level, not at the beginning, not at the intermediate, but at the highest level. Finally, abandon all dharmas and take refuge in me. And so we finally reach this last one, moksha or mukti, liberation, which takes us up and out of time, space, and causation, which takes us up and out of identification with the body, with the mind, with the ego. And it's not a rejection. It is, as Swami Visheshananda says, it's deification of everything. It's that realization that consciousness is seamless and that I am a part of everything. Everything is a part of me. It is all within me. And so, as the Swami says, the realization of moksha, liberation, is the coping stone of human life, and the pursuit of dharma, artha, kama, only support it. Now, how does artha support this? Well, we can talk about it in terms of the individual, that it supports it by getting us through our desires, by helping us with dharma in the beginning, that, at the front, putting the one before the zeros, as Sri Ramakrishna put it, that we fulfill our desires through dharma. And that fulfillment may come either through being satisfied and not needing it anymore, or, well, that's kind of the same thing as where I was going. Yes, that we get beyond it. It's no longer of interest to us anymore. So there's that level. Now, at another level, this artha, this wealth that the individual generates, is for the good of others. And so, as Sri Ramakrishna said, that wealth is properly spent when it supports a dharmic family and dharmic causes. And dharmic causes have branches out into two things: the social welfare and also the highest good welfare. So like in the Indian system, which is actually no different from what we have right now, in terms of how money is spent, that the money went to support the teachers who then gave the knowledge to society. And here, this brings up a conversation that's happening in society right now, which is that people are leaving churches, leaving congregations, leaving religions that they consider quote unquote organized. And some of them are agnostic, some of them are atheists, but a great many of them consider themselves still to be spiritual. And over the decades that this has been happening more and more rapidly, people are also finding that they miss the ritual and they miss having access to somebody who can guide their family, somebody who can guide them. And so when people leave these institutions, rightly or wrongly, then they don't get supported. And so things begin to fall apart in society. So this artha, this wealth earned by legitimate means, goes to support those who are becoming teachers, who are gaining their realization along the way. So we saw how that worked in India, where the sannyasins, they did not earn anything, but they went from house to house with their bowl, and they offered, they came with their bowl, and then the householders would put something in the bowl, and the teacher, the sannyasin would also, if the family wanted it, would then be giving teachings, or the sannyasin would be in the village giving teachings, and the householders would come and they would make offerings. And so this is how that happened. There were also the teachers, the Gurukula system, the neighborhood teachers of Dharma, and the Brahmin caste, which weren't supposed to earn money outright like a merchant or anything. And so the householders who were earning the money, they would give a portion of their wealth to these people who were upholding the transmission of Dharma in society. So this is another way that artha leads to moksha, because it may not be that the individual is yet ready or qualified or even desiring moksha, but their wealth is making it possible for others for whom that desire has arisen strongly. So now let's look at how this appears in the 4 stages of life, because we see these 4 stages in society, especially in India, but we can also, if we look closely, see it even here in the West. But it's in disrepair, especially according to the Vedic system. So in the 4 stages of life, the 4 ashramas, the first stage is student life, called brahmacharya. And this is where a youth receives instruction in earthly and spiritual life while striving to develop character, discipline, concentration, and virtues. And this was done, they went to live in the Vedic system, they went to live with their teacher. They didn't go there and pay a tuition. Their families supported with whatever wealth they had, which might have been just in kind, things like cattle, things like food, etc., the harvest, but also funds. And the student served the teacher. And so that went on until, say for the first 25 years of life. And then they entered into the householder life. It's also possible that if they were highly qualified and not interested in householder life, in having a family and raising children, that they would jump straight to sannyas. Okay, but generally, society worked out in these 4 different ways. And when the student left the teacher at the end of studying all the Vedas, all the sacrifices, all the rituals, but when we say studied the Vedas, that means all portions of it. They not only learned what they needed in order to perform sacrifices and stay in harmony and be able to transmit the teachings to their own children in family life, but they also had studied the other teachings, the Upanishads, which prepared them, at least with the knowledge of what was beyond all that. So they had all of that. So they could help pass that on as family members. So when they had reached the culmination of their studies and it was time to move on to householder life, the teacher said to them, "Stray not from truth," and pass that truth on to your children. So then in householder life, one lived according to spiritual ideals and practices, raising noble children and exemplifying and teaching virtues and spiritual truths, performing civic duty according to one's station in life. Station in life means things like probably your socioeconomic status, as well as what in the Indian system, what your caste was. So here, our caste is socioeconomic in the US. The idea of caste is, it's just kind of an archetype in human life, but it just plays out differently in different cultures. So notice that in the 4 stages of life, in brahmacharya, in the student life, the student is paired up with learning all the dharma, and that's all they do. So the artha that the householder is earning is also going to support the student and the student's teacher. It's also going to support social welfare things in society. And then in householder life, not only is one engaged in dharma through daily spiritual practice, one is also, of course, engaged in artha, in earning wealth by legitimate means, satisfying legitimate earthly desires. But because they had that period of brahmacharya, and because they're still, even as householders, connected to their teachers, their spiritual teacher, they also know that moksha, liberation, is the ultimate goal of life. So all that is going on for the householder. Now, what comes after that? The householder period of life lasted as long up to the point that one had children and the children were able to support themselves. They also would say, which to me was kind of humorous, when you first start to see the gray hairs on your head. When I would have had to move to Vanaprastha when I was 13. But in any case, when children are able to support themselves, then the householder graduated to the stage of Vanaprastha. In the old days, that meant becoming a forest dweller. And it meant focusing one's life, because you're in your 50s by now, focusing one's life on spiritual matters entirely. So the sacrifices, the 5 great yagyas, and all the other kinds of sacrifices that one was doing, and in the ancient days, the things like the fire sacrifices that were performed, I think, 2 or 3 times a day in conjunction with one's spouse, all these things that were done daily and required wealth to engage in, now became symbolic. And they studied what was called the Aranyakas, the treatises of the forest dwellers. The forest dwellers learned how to engage in these sacrifices mentally. And so here's another part where, when we talk about consciousness as seamless, and it includes all those different realms of existence, and that's us. That consciousness is who we really are. So we're existing simultaneously in all those different levels. We're getting more and more subtle. These symbolic sacrifices brought them closer and closer to penetrating through these. And this was done because these sacrifices were done mentally. They were done as meditation, as focused concentrations. So we do that nowadays by engaging in yogic contemplation, by making those yogic connections, by meditating on the alambanas from external, like the 5 elements, to internal, all the way to the different aspects of the mind and beyond. So in these ways, this is how, through this dissolving of the mind stream, this is how we're uniting, becoming integrated with all levels of our being. So this So at the Vanaprastha stage, this forest dweller, one retires from family and civic duties and devotes oneself to sadhana. So see how these four things, sadhana, spiritual practice, these four stages of life go directly with the four ideals of life or the four fruits of life. And when society is running smoothly and weaning people off of attachment to objects, then this system generates sannyasins, complete renunciates. And in the literature that I've read, what is said is that a society that is not generating sannyasins, whatever we want to call them, renunciates, people who, those beings who want to realize God or realize truth and all of life is for that focus alone, that becomes their sole desire, then we have this fourth stage. And we don't see very much of that in our society. And notice how all of this goes back to brahmacharya, those first 25 years of life that were given to learning the Dharma and inculcating the virtues of such things as material welfare for all and the highest good of all, of putting earthly knowledge at the service of society, at the service of supreme knowledge, incorporating that with the five great sacrifices to the gods, to the rishis, to the ancestors, to the humans, and to animals in the environment. All of this works together. So the sannyasin is the final and highest state of dharmic life, renouncing all earthly and even heavenly affairs in order to pursue this spiritual emancipation called moksha. And so remember also, I want to repeat this quote, that for those who then reach the stage after vanaprasthan or after householder life, and they are seized with this intense renunciation of all, which, as Swami Sheshananda said, is deification of everything. Say one's desire is to see God in everything. This is renunciation of desire for earthly ends. Okay? And when this takes place, the ego is maturing at the highest level. And when the ego is mature, it's moving from sakshahamkara, as we learned about in the last seminar, this witness consciousness, from being an ego that is focused only on the body, takes oneself as the body only, to becoming a witness, getting detachment, realize, we all understand this, becoming a detached witness of the body and all earthly activities. That's the ripening stage. Finally, the param ahamkara, which can be linked to the cosmic ego, which is Ishvara, the ruler of the universe, or Ishvari, the divine mother of the universe. So let's go back to this quote that detour came off of. As the ultimate ascent is steep and the lofty air extremely rarefied, they, meaning those who are moving through all three and approaching the fourth stage of life, they not only left behind material possessions, but also stripped themselves of ego and desires. So what does that look like? What happens when somebody when somebody takes on this param ahamkara, this supreme ego, which is the cosmic ego, we have a Sri Ramakrishna who has the ability, like at Kalpataru Day, when he asked Girish, what have you seen in me that makes you tell everyone that I'm a divine incarnation? And Girish said, how can I say when even the great ones could not say? And then Sri Ramakrishna goes into the mode of the wish-fulfilling tree, which is that cosmic ego, and says, what more shall I say? May your consciousness be illumined, Chaitanya ho. And that's what happened. So we have the great avatars who can do that. The Jesus who gave the power to teach to his apostles and other occurrences of that nature. We should not look upon these things as miracles. These are the power of Ishvara. And then what about, let me see if I can find it. Because I wanted to show also how this beautiful cosmic ego manifests. It becomes, this burning heart that wants to protect. Isn't that what the cosmic ego does? As the Lord or the Mother of the universe, they're protecting all of creation. All of creation is a manifestation of that. So a beautiful thing that Swami Vivekananda said. He said, what is the good of that spiritual practice or realization which does not benefit others, does not conduce to the well-being of people sunk in ignorance and delusion, does not help in rescuing them from the clutches of lust and wealth? Do you think, so long as one individual endures in bondage, you will have any liberation? So long as he is not liberated, and it may take several lifetimes, you will have to be born to help him, to make him realize Brahman. Every jiva, every individual is part of yourself, which is the rationale of all work for others. And then there's, that wasn't exactly the quote I wanted. No, that's not it either. Oh, well, never mind. And then we have Holy Mother, who is a manifestation of universal motherhood, where she says, I am the mother of the wicked, as I am the mother of the virtuous. Never fear. Whenever you are in distress, say to yourself, I have a mother. So this mother is capitalized, although she also wanted people to look upon her as their very own mother, not be in awe of her as the universal mother, but to have that intimate connection. So now we only have 20 minutes left, and let's shift gears here, because I think in the West, in America, and especially among Vedantists who are looking at this system and are hearing the teachings of Vedanta, and often hearing, the neti side of things, this is not Brahman, this is not Brahman, this is not Brahman, and wondering, how to make this work in our life. So the four ideals that we just talked about show that. There's also this sense that comes across people that, oh, I can't do this unless I become a vanaprasthan, or I become a sannyasin, or maybe do not have a family, when actually that's one of my legitimate earthly desires, is to have a family and all. So how does this work? So we put together this chart of how to move from Ashanatrayam to Dharmatrayam. And this Dharmatrayam is in quotes because We may have coined that ourselves. I don't know if it actually exists as a Sanskrit word, but the Ashana trium, if you're not aware of that, is what's called in Tantra the triple bondage of spouse, wealth, and offspring. It's a bondage. Why? Well, it's a bondage when is a better question. It's a bondage when our entire life revolves around that without taking into consideration the material well-being of all beings, not just our own family, and the highest good of all beings, which doesn't take into account sacrifice to God, to the rishis, that is, keeping the teachings going from one generation to the next, and sacrificing to the ancestors, to other human beings and their welfare, material and otherwise, and to the well-being of animals in the environment. Okay? So, but what, and there's also an emphasis on this, that everything about this bondage to spouse, wealth, and offspring is attended by the unripe ego, not the ripening ego, but the unripe ego that's all about I, me, and mine. So what happens when we put that dharma in front of all of this? So that's going to be answered after we take a look at those living under the limitations of Ashana trium. They assume that the world is the only reality, the physical world. They're either not aware of, or they're turning their back on the knowledge of the great ones that shows that consciousness is seamless and all realms of existence exist within us. And the only way to access this is to stop everything always going outside and bring it inside. So the next point is they believe, those living under the limitations of the Ashana trium assume we are separate individuals that are born and die. I am my body. I am my emotions. I am my thoughts, my personality, and this ego is mine. All of this knowledge is mine. This wealth is mine. Everything comes under this unripe ego, which is like a very thick and opaque veil. Another point is they take the purpose of life as pleasure. So my home is for security and enjoyment, entertainment. My wealth is for me and mine only. In other words, my family, if that. My spouse is there for my happiness and fulfillment. My children are physical bodies and personalities that are brought forth to fulfill my earthly desires. Karmas and samskars, these tendencies, these habits developed over lifetimes, do not exist. Everything happens in one lifetime, and that's it, which means that I can blame my parents, I can blame my school teachers, I can blame society for everything happening to me. That's a very unfortunate state of mind. So now, in contrast, what does the householder yogi do with this dharma in front of everything? In contrast, householder yogis proceed on the following principles. Only Brahman, only God is real. The world is a manifestation of its dynamic power. It's Maya. It deludes when discrimination between the real and the unreal is absent. But it is sportive play, lila, when discrimination and detachment are present. Right there, that is almost the core difference between Ashana trium, bondage to spouse, wealth, and offspring, and dharma, the householder yogi's relationship to spouse, wealth, and offspring. The next point, the Atman, the indivisible self, soul, is never born or dies, but associates with psychophysical forms. So in other words, one's own, apparently, psychophysical form, one is associating with that. It is a vehicle for consciousness. And the purpose of life is to realize this self. One's home is an ashram, and one's wealth is to support noble causes, dharma, and raising a dharmic family. One's spouse is a divine companion of transcendent essence to have and to hold with selfless, loving service along the path of yoga. And children? Children are so many forms of the one indivisible Atman, temporarily in one's care to help them pick up the thread of yoga from previous lifetimes. You see, a divine couple of this nature is performing these sacrifices daily, is performing sadhana daily. And if they come together for the purpose of bringing forth noble children, noble souls will be attracted to them. And these noble souls may also will undoubtedly have different kinds of samskaras. But because of the training that a dharmic householder should have received from childhood onward, then they know how to exemplify dharmic life at all stages. So, and they can pass this on. So this is a statement, this picking up the thread of one's yoga from previous lifetimes is something that Sri Krishna talks about, that when a soul is striving for realization, but doesn't quite get there, then in their next lifetime, they pick up the thread of their yoga. So, and they find themselves in a more dharmic family so that they can do that. All of this works if we pay attention to learning this deeply and assimilating it into our lives and teaching it to our children, to our grandchildren, to our nieces and nephews, to the children in the neighborhood, because there aren't too many of us with this knowledge. So, and final point, the manifestation of innate tendencies, samskaras, are to be scrutinized with guidance from the preceptor in order to nurture the beneficial and to help neutralize the negative. This final point here is how we raise our children and society's children, okay? So we have to always keep the teacher, the guru, the one who is further along or self-realized, keep them in our life to help us pass this on. So we've reached the end of our time here. I'll close with a chant. Please join me. Om Masato, Om Masato Masadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya, Abhira Bhira Maeti, Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the illusion of death to realization of eternal existence. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Aim Guru Bhyo Namaha.